Hey guys, welcome back. In the previous videos, we explored our application under test, RESTful Booker, and we did wrote some exploratory tests in Aqua using HTTP client to see if all the endpoints are working fine or not. And now we are confident that the endpoints are working fine, and it's time now to write some basic rest assured test. And the goal of this exercise is to show how you can use RestAssured to write some very basic tests, but also to highlight some challenges that comes, if you only rely on RestAssured to write those tests, and if you don't have a decoupled test design, right? So first and foremost, let's go to RestAssured website. This is the RestAssured website. Here they have given an example of writing a RestAssured test. So imagine you're working with RestAssured for the first time. You don't know how to start. So maybe this could be a good starting point for you. So let's copy this. Let's open Aqua again. Let's create a new class and let's call this class as basic rest assured tests. Okay. And this also explains that these tests are basic in nature. I should also add a comment here. These tests are for demo purpose only. Do not use this as reference to design your tests, right? So these tests are for demo purpose only, and to show the challenges that comes with relying only on rest assured for writing tests. Do not use this as a reference to design your test, right? So let's copy paste this thing, and if I do Alt Enter with JUnit Jupyter API, we have the test. And let's also import Alt Enter static method from RestAssured. These are from Hemcrest. For now, I'm just importing them. Alt Enter. Okay. And so typically the syntax that RestAssured uses is a given when then syntax, right? So here the given was not mentioned. So let's add a given syntax, RestAssured given. And let's say, if we look into this explore booking API, and let's say if you want to write a test, let's say for posting a booking, right? We need to provide two things. We need to provide a header called content type application JSON, another header accept application JSON, and then we need to provide a body, right? So let's call it as header, and we could say header content type, and then we could say application JSON, right? And then we could have another header which could be accept, and the same thing, we wanted to accept application JSON, and we also wanted to have a base URI, and the base URI would be let's come here. If we go back to environment file, this is the base URL. So let's copy the base URL, let's provide it here. And what else? Another thing that we are missing is we're missing a body, right? And to provide a body, in fact, what we can do is we can say string JSON body, and let's just copy paste it from this particular class. Control C and Control V, and now we have a JSON body as well. Not a very neat way of providing body, and in the future we will see like it's not a nice idea to give body as a string, and we will find better ways of substituting body as serialized and deserialized pose objects, right? But for now, for this demonstration, we are saying we are only relying on rest assured. So we're not going to rely on anything else, right? So let's format this. Okay. So after this, we have to provide a dot with when, right? So let's remove this dot. Let's put this here. It's a little bit of a weird syntax that, it gives a dot in the end. I like to give dot in the beginning. So let's remove these dots, and now we are fine, right? So we have given the base URL. If we go back to HTTP environment, this request, the endpoint is booking, so we'll come here and we will give the endpoint as booking, right? So let's delete this, and we are making a post call, right? So we are saying, given these headers, which is exactly the same as what we have, let me remove this, which is exactly the same as what we have provided here. So we are doing a one-to-one mapping. We are providing a base URL exactly as it is provided here in the post call, and then we are providing a body as it is provided here, right? And once we make a call, then we are saying, then assert for the status code to be 200. And at this moment, let's not assert the body because we don't know how the body will look like, right? So I'm going to comment the code. And in fact, let's just do then extract response, and let's print this. So what I'm going to do is I also want to print out the response so that we can see what the response was, right? Let's also change the name of the test. I typically like to name my test with something like assert that, and then I say assert that user can create a booking. Typically what you see in a Gherkin's like syntax is they name their test as something called given, when, then. And I think in many cases this results into verbose test cases, which are difficult to read and which are not very fluent. By using this assert that style, I am able to basically do the same thing, assert that someone can do something, which results into something, but it just results into much more fluent names than when I always rely on given, when, then. Okay, so with this, let's say if I run a test, let's see what happens. Okay, so we were able to create a booking 9551. This is the response that we got, and the response code was indeed 200. So now we can actually write more tests to assert the body, right? Because now we know, Alt Enter, Control Z. So for the body to work, we need to have a validatable response. So let me not extract response pretty print at this moment. Let me first do assertions and then I can extract the response, right? So let me do a Control X here. And now we can see, now this is, we can do the validations, and in the end we can actually extract the response and we can pretty print it, right? So now here we are like doing the session like Loto ID. So if I go back, in this particular case, the response was Loto ID, right? This is how it was asserting it. And then Loto winners, winners and winner ID. So it's like a dot syntax. So if I go back here, looking at this, I can actually extract the booking dot first name, and in this case I'm going to hard code it, right? But we will find better ways of doing it. For now, this is just an example, so it doesn't really matter. And then it says in the body you can provide multiple comma separated things. So for example, let's delete this, and if I put it as let's copy this, Control V, let me put it here, objects, booking, and then last name, and we call it as brown. So for now, this is all I'm going to use. And by the way, with advanced techniques, we will not hard code our input, which is already being used in the test data. We will reuse it. But for this example purposes, we are just going to give a very basic example of rest assured. So this is fine. So if I run this, we can see we are able to assert multiple fields. Now the problem with this approach is, as you can see, if there are a lot of fields that you need to assert, you have to basically provide everything in this particular test. And before you know, this test is becoming very non-readable because it contains the body in the test. It contains a lot of information about headers, which is going to be common across tests. The base URL is going to be common across tests. And by the way, we also need a way to pass this programmatically, because now this will only work in one test environment and not in others. So there are a lot of challenges that we see by using rest assured exactly as is shown here. So let's add few more assertions here. Total price, let's call it 111. Let's put a comma here. Deposit paid, let's make it true, comma, booking dates dot check-in. Let's assert the whole thing at least for once. Control V, comma, comma, Control D, checkout, 2019, and Control D. Let's remove this, additional needs. So this is also coming in under booking, right? So additional needs, breakfast. So this is like doing a full response assertion apart from asserting the response code. So let's do one more run. And everything works fine. If we want to make our test fail, let's make it breakfast 1, because it's always a good practice to see if your test is failing at least once. So let's run this. Cool. So now it's failing. It's also telling us, what we expected and what we actually got. So this is perfect. Now imagine if we go back to our application, post booking, where is it? Create booking. I think the additional needs was an optional field, and let's see here. Booking, additional needs, and I think even if you don't pass additional needs, you can still create a response. So let's try to go back and imagine if you want to do a test where you're saying create a booking with only mandatory details, right? So let's copy this, and this time I'm going to create a test which says assert that user can create a booking with only mandatory details, right? And in this particular case, I'm going to remove this additional needs and only going to provide other details. In this case, I have nothing to assert for additional needs, but let's run the test anyways. Let's see what happens. Okay, so it's calling it as a bad request. So it did not like that, yeah, I think because there's an extra comma in the end, this was the problem. Let's see, additional needs, new line. Yeah, so if I run again, run. Okay, so this is good. And it said JSON path booking additionally doesn't match. Expected was breakfast, actual was null. Of course it's null because the field does not exist. So let's remove this and let's run it one more time. And everything worked fine this time, right? And maybe you want to write one more test, and this could be for, let's say, um, let's call it as assert that user cannot create a booking with missing uh, mandatory details, right? So let's say if user does not provide price details, we want to see if the user can still create a booking or not, right? So let me remove this assertion and let's try to run it one more time. By the way, I don't know if this is a mandatory detail or not. I'm just trying it out for now. Cool. So it says expected 200, but it got a server error. It was not able to process this particular request, right? So if I make it as 500 and if I remove the whole body assertion, I think it will go fine. Cool. So basically now we have got 3 tests. I did not even created other kind of test like all the other get, delete tests, etc., etc. But what we clearly see is that if we only rely on rest assured without other mechanisms of dealing with, for example, test data that varies in very little ways. So for example, this data was pretty much common across all the 3 tests, but it was just varying in a couple of fields. For example, in this case, I was not mentioning the price. In this case, I was not mentioning the additional thing. And in this particular case, I was mentioning the whole data. And it would be nice if we have a mechanism to deal with data in a better way. Also, it would be nice if you don't have to like clutter our whole test with everything inside the test. If we see in all the 3 tests, this part was duplicate information, which was a cross test. um, the endpoint was also duplicate in this particular case, and maybe in the future if they change the booking endpoint to say something else, you have to change it in multiple places. And also all this code for validating the body response was duplicate. So as you can see with this example, um, rest assured in itself is not sufficient to write tests which are clean, which does not have duplication, and which reads nice. And in this particular case, by the way, we were only testing this endpoint in isolation. But if you have to write any sort of integration or sort of like partial end-to-end test, which involves multiple API endpoints, you can imagine how long your test would become. And you might not even, and it would be very difficult to understand what exactly a user is trying to test in a particular test. So what you want is like tests which are very small, which are very concise, and which reads like reading English statements and not like filled with all these implementation details. So there's a concept called separating intentions from implementation, which is what we are going to do in the next sessions. So I don't want to like make this video any more longer than it needs to be. I think it already it already serves to show the purpose that if you only rely on rest assured, you will end up having a lot of code duplication, and your test will become too big and your test intention will get lost somewhere in the implementation details. So with all these challenges in mind, in the next video we will see how we can create a decoupled test design, which is what I think I mentioned in my very first video, which looks something like so let me zoom in, which looks something like this, where we separate all the information like test data, config, common headers data, request body, API information, response information, and assertions into their own classes. So that's it for this video, guys. I'll see you in the next video. Thank you. See you. Bye-bye.